Looks like I'm live. Um, what is up, everyone? Um, Today we're gonna do just a normal stream where I just react to a few videos. Not gonna be anything crazy, but I pulled up a few videos that I'm not sure where they're gonna go. I'm not sure exactly what they're gonna talk about, so I'm kind of excited. The last stream I did, what was I talking about? They were starting talking about the art of seduction. I mean, that's the thing about most of Robert Greene's books. They're very I'm not saying this is a bad thing. It's just it's a different style of stuff that I'm normally interested in. I'm normally interested in more um, esoteric, to say, more like up for interpretation, more spiritual, more individualistic. Uh, yeah, we'll go through some more stuff like that because that's just always more fun for me to watch, like these spiritually motivating, inspirational things. So this guy Eckhart Tolle, I think that's how you say it. I spelled it wrong, and then yeah, okay. Okay, it's Eckhart. Okay. Well, I gotta change the title. There we go. I'm so bad at spelling. Please don't make fun of me. That's like the one thing I've just never been able to do, spell. But this guy, I have a book by him. It's called The Power of Now. Someone's been telling me to read it for a while, and it's one of those books that the minute I pick it up, I'm going to be able to finish it within a day. So, I'm almost through all the books that I was trying to get through. I only have two left. And this one is only like 100 pages, so it's gonna take me like a day or so. And then this one's a play, so it's a lot of like it's a lot of like empty space. So yeah, it's only 500 pages too. It's not that bad. So yeah, I'll get to that soon. I might even listen to the audiobook because that one might be interesting in that format. But yeah, we'll get into this.
Now, the ego, which is a mind made sense of self.
I like to think the ego is who society tells you you are. It's created from the day we're born. It's who we perceive ourselves to be. And this is why you hear people say, oh, you have an inflated ego. Oh, you need to get an ego. You need to have a sense of ego. You need to have this. Like it's purely something that we create and it's purely something we can control. But you can also just avoid it and destroy it. When you look into like new age spiritual movements, like the more Western ideas, such as like Neville Goddard or other people like maybe Napoleon Hill, you would put in that category, Bob Proctor, people like that. They tell you to control your ego. They tell you to tell yourself who you are. They tell you to basically write your own script of your self perception. Whereas people, I'm assuming this is what he's going to say because he's a spiritual guy. I'm assuming this idea is going to be you should get away from your ego. Same thing with Alan Watts, same thing with Osho, same thing with all those people. The more spiritually minded want to ditch the ego. The more Western minded want to control the ego. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because if you make your ego pure, it kind of fades into exist, like it kind of just fades. But some people get too fixated on the results. Like the more you fixate on the results, the more you fixate on the actual changes that are solidified, the less likely anything's going to actually change.
A mind made identity that consists of narratives, thoughts that you identify with. The earliest story about the rising of the ego is the myth of Narcissus. This is, of course, where the word narcissism comes from, and every ego has very strong narcissistic elements to it. The story of Narcissus is there was a young man, very beautiful, in
The idea of like selfishness is very weird because people are selfish because they think they're valued more than others. They think they're more valuable, that my life means more. And in essence, this is true because in essence, nobody's life can mean more than your own. But when you take it at the expense of others, when you value yourself above them, like realistically, it's when it gets dangerous. It's when it gets detrimental. I don't think it's necessarily wrong to have selfish tendencies to like focus on yourself first, but do it for the sake of benefiting others. Do it for the sake of others because like the way I like to think about it is like I try to become a better person so that I can be a better person to everyone else. Like if I don't deal with my stress, my anxiety, my fear, all of these things that hold me back, all these things that are going to make me an annoying person to deal with, like why should I bring that into more people's life? Why should I do that to people? Like I want to put myself stuff like myself first so that I can be a better self to others.
in ancient Greece. And this young man, because it was a time
Oh, I gotta take this sweatshirt off. I'm dying. Ooh. The sweatshirt's like way too small, and every time I've taken it off, my entire shirt's come off.
time before mirrors were invented and before we had the wonderful invention of selfies. He had never seen himself, and one day he looked into a pool of water and he saw his own reflection. And he was so fascinated by his own reflection. The story says that he fell in love with himself, but my interpretation is really that he became obsessed with himself, but not with himself, with the image of himself.
That's the idea. It's like selfishness is when you're in love with the image of yourself, not who you truly are, not the deep spiritual side, not the deep side that's seeking
And
fulfillment.
after that, he was no longer a happy person. There are various versions of that story, but his life didn't go well after that. So that I believe there's sometimes very deep wisdom embodied in mythology, in myth. It really, what it points to is the arising of the human ego, which is a kind of phantom self that you carry around, that you mistake for who you actually are. It consists of identifications with possessions, identification with your own body, including, of course, the color of your skin. It's part of your own body.
It's everything that you can define, everything that you have, anything that you can own, any title you have, anything society's given to you is usually what comprises your ego. For a lot of people, it's like if you're seen as a good person in society, then it's not a bad thing to have an ego. But like ego is always ego, ambition, these ideas, they're always the death of great men because it's ego that made Alexander the Great want to keep conquering after he'd conquered the known world. It was ego that made Caesar want to become a dictator after he had become Rome's most successful general, except for Scipio, maybe. Scipio, I don't know how to say it, but like it's a weird thing that like it keeps you from never being satisfied. And these are like man-made creations that almost hold us back. Like they may serve you for a time, they may be beneficial for a time, but when it's ego based on your material possessions, ego based on how others view you, this is when it becomes.
And so the child is given a toy car, and that's the beginning of the ego, is the feeling of the child, this is mine. So there's a
That's
certain
true.
identification
Yes.
with the toy, a self-identification. So it enhances, because it only works if another child does not have that toy, then it really works. This is my car. So it enhances a certain sense of
It makes you feel better. It makes you feel elevated.
identity. And identity is something that humans desperately seek after meeting the needs of food and shelter. One could almost say the next thing after that is
This is very similar to Nietzsche's idea of will to power. So the will to power means that human beings want to exact their will on others. Human beings want to, in some way, take advantage of their environment, take advantage of the world in some way, exact their power over it. So this is the goal after food and shelter has been basically provided. And once food and shelter gets provided, you want to almost become master of your own domain. You want to become in some way controlling of your world, your life. And um, you can argue if this is a destructive idea. You can argue if this is something that is created ingenuity. I think there's definitely some drawbacks and some benefits. I think anything in excess becomes bad. Like I think a lot of the baseline human functions are good things that over time get perverted into bad things, over time get taken advantage of by people that want to have more power, that want to have more material wealth and things
It's
like that.
the psychological need in human beings for a sense of identity. And the first thing that humans do, and you cannot, there's no preventing this, they seek an identity by identifying with this, that, or the other. Later, the adult may have a car and derives part of their sense of identity from having this car, but it only works because it's compared. The ego is comparative, the image in your mind of who you are.
Teddy Roosevelt said this comparison is the thief of joy. Any minute you compare yourself to someone who is lower than you, recognizes that there's a social hierarchy. And the moment you recognize that is the moment that you recognize that someone out there has more money than you, has a nicer car than you, has a nicer yacht than you. Their wife is prettier. They have a better house. They have more houses. They like, you know what I mean? It's like we can play the comparison game all day long, and even if you're the richest man in the world, you're still lacking in something. When Bezos was the richest man in the world, like his girlfriend, like there was a viral video of her like looking at Leonardo DiCaprio in like awe, and he played it off like decently well because he made a joke about it, like, "Oh yeah, Leo, don't stand too close to the ledge," and like he was like standing next to a "Don't fall off the cliff" sign. Like it was funny, but like even that sense, like even being the richest man in the world, like you're still not as physically attractive as someone else. You know what I mean? It's like we all have our drawbacks, and like there's a million categories that we can compare ourselves to others on, but the moment you start comparing yourself is the moment you start your journey of unhappiness.
It only works because other people don't have it. So imagine you have a Rolls Royce and it enhances your sense of self. Every time you look at it, you sit in it, you are seen by other people. It enhances your identity, your sense of self. Now imagine a scenario where, let's say there's a kind of a twilight zone. Suddenly you wake up in a reality where every human being at the age of 20.
If you've ever like built a car, or not built a car, if you've ever bought a car or gotten a new car, and you were like, man, this is a cool car, and then you see the new model drive by, and you're like, I don't like this car anymore. Like that's this idea. It's like a few years ago that car made you so happy, but now it doesn't make you as happy. You were so impressed with it, you were so in love with that car, but now you want something else. Like this is the idea of ego. Ego will always demand more. Your ambition will always demand more. These are forces that basically feed off of your life essence. Like some people will sacrifice everything just for the sake of feeling like they were a useful person to society, a useful person to others. But were they really a useful person, or did they really give away all their prime years, all the time they could have been spending with their family, and put it into an Excel spreadsheet? Like it's very sad that like most of the work nowadays is so monotonous, so fake, so not real. Like I mean, we throw around terms like middle class, we say all these things like this, but like to me, middle class doesn't mean like you work for a corporation. To me, middle class is like there's businesses, there's communities, there's people that help each other through that. Like I think that's ideally what we should strive for. We shouldn't strive to have all of these corporations have such control, such power, because corporations are inherently corrupt. When there's that much money involved, they start treating the customers like they are just bank account numbers, like they're just customers, like there's no humanity to them. And this is what leads to the mass consumerism and the mass loss of hope. But like if we just had small business owners and people that like actually knew each other, paying each other money, like I feel like it would just be a much better way to do it. And it's very sad that like politicians on both sides won't talk about this. They'll talk about middle class. They'll talk about we want to benefit the middle class, but they won't help small business. They will let, you know, pandemics bankrupt every single small business, but the big ones can stay open. It's very weird, isn't it?
Is given, it's the same Rolls Royce. Everybody drives exactly the same Rolls Royce. Suddenly, it would no longer serve to enhance your identity because you have nothing to compare itself to, because the ego needs, ultimately, it seeks some kind of superiority. It compares itself to others in one way or another. It seeks some kind of superiority over others. It's an unconscious process. There's always an
there's different types of ego as well. There's the moral superiority. You hear these people like, oh well, I didn't sell out, I did this, I did that. Like even people that are more righteous pretend to be better. It's like there should be no comparison. Like I shouldn't look to you and judge you and say that like you're not happy because you do this, this, and this. Like I should only look to myself and be like, that style of living isn't going to do it for me. Like I should only be worried about myself. It's the Bible quote. I think this is the best example. Let he who hath no sin cast the first stone. And the idea is that like until you purify yourself, until you fix yourself, until you get rid of your own troubles, don't look to anyone else for anything else. And like the ego is something that unconsciously will just do this. Unconsciously will just judge others and say like this person isn't living in this way. Like who am I to judge you? Maybe you're not doing good, but maybe you're doing better than yesterday. And now I'm judging you for making progress. Like it's the weirdest thing how the mind works. Is the weirdest thing how judgments work. And um, just recognizing yourself judging others is um, something that will really benefit you a lot because anytime you judge others, like you can look for something inside yourself that is not being met. So like for me, like one of the things I used to judge people a lot was like, oh, this person isn't doing anything. Oh, this person isn't doing anything. And like really what I was telling myself was like, I wish I could relax. There used to be a time in my life where if I wasn't, you know, doing something productive, I would like damn near have a panic attack and I would basically have to go to the gym or stretch out or do all this or do all that. And it's like you need downtime. Now we can argue about the productivity of some downtime, like maybe you should read instead of play video games, maybe you should read instead of watch Netflix, but like you still need time to relax, you still need time to unwind your mind, still needs to just calm down and like who am I to judge you if something makes you feel better?
Unease behind it because the ego is never feels really at ease or fulfilled. There's always an underlying sense of lack, of insufficiency, of not enough. I am not enough.
This is like I know this is just a drawing, but this is how most people that go to the gym see themselves as well. Like it's so sad that like online people that have tremendous physiques that like you could go to any beach and people would be like, oh my God, like still don't think they look good. Like who's that one dude that was like a big natural body bodybuilder. I don't think he like competed, but like he's a big natural bodybuilder and like he's like, yeah, I just want to see my potential. And really it's just like body dysmorphia. Like he just didn't feel like he would get big enough to make himself happy. And it's like it's so sad because you look better than 99.9999% of the world, but you're still not happy. And you wrap up so much of your identity with your physical appearance and it will never be enough because that's the truth of the ego. It's never enough. It's never enough to fulfill the materialistic things you need. You need to seek much deeper things. You need to seek spiritual fulfillment. You need to seek some sort of fulfillment that's beyond the surface level, that can't be seen. What are the deep-seated issues that you're still dealing with as a kid? What are the things that still hold you back? What are the fears that you're still not facing? These are the questions we have to start asking ourselves instead of, posturing behind ego, posturing behind the defense mechanism. Because that's all ego is. Ego is just a defense mechanism to say like, oh yeah, I might not be doing great, but I'm doing better than this guy. Oh yeah, well, you might have, got this one accomplishment, but like I have this title, I have this arbitrary role. Like, oh, this is my salary. I'm better than you. Like it's to compensate for some lack of spirit. It's to compensate from some lack of soul. And when we start recognizing that ego is a creation of this world, not of us, then we can start to get around it. We can start to break free from it. You're never really gonna truly transcend ego unless you transcend the individual. And this is something you only see if you're like literally Buddha. Like Buddha transcended the ego. Buddha transcended the identity. Same thing with Osho. You can argue Jesus Christ the way he speaks. It's very transcendent of an individual. It's not like he's not really a person. He's kind of something beyond that. He's as Nietzsche would say, the Ubermensch, the Superman. Like when you get beyond ego, you get beyond being controlled by others. You are yourself.
Because ultimately it's only a mental image that you mistake for who you are. It's often associated with a narrative in your mind that tells you about my life. You call it my life. Me and my life. This is me. This is my life. People have a relationship with themselves. Isn't that strange? They have a relationship with them. So this is why you have to. I hate myself. I
When we get fed up with our circumstances, this is us believing that our circumstances are going to persist. Um, it's very weird how if you don't like the past, you cling on to it. So like if something bad happened to me in the past, cool, it happened. I can't change it. I can't do anything about it. Like, is it beneficial for me to keep dwelling on it every day and getting emotional and getting all worked up and saying like I'll never be able to do anything because this will always be holding me back. This. Like my life's so terrible because this happened to me. It's like whatever you're projecting on the future, whatever horrible reality you see is purely just an accumulation of the past. Right now, you're living in the moment, and if you just drop all that stuff, the future's different. You're unchained. But you're carrying around 100-pound weight on your vest. You're carrying this baggage, you're carrying this damage, you're carrying this trauma. And you right now you're projecting it into the future. The future that you see for yourself right now is an accumulation of the past. Do you like everything about your past? If you do, believe the same things. But if you don't, change your beliefs, change your attitudes, change the way you approach things, change the way you see things, and you will change your future. It's literally that simple. And like I know I vastly oversimplified these things, but this is literally what the father of American psychology, William James, said. Attitudes are more important than facts. Attitudes are more important than facts. I'm going to say it again. It is so important what I just said. There are people who drink because their parents were alcoholics. There are people who will never drink because their parents were alcoholics. The way we view things, the way we take things, the way we interpret what has happened to us and move it on to the future, act based off of these interpretations, controls more than we can imagine. Maybe you can't control what happened to you, but you can control what you do about it. You can control how you respond. You can overcome it. I'm telling you, whatever you went through, at the very minimum, it shows how strong you are. And it's very weird how we don't approach things in this way, but the minute you start approaching things in this way, the minute they start to fold. Problems are only as big as you make them. And stop making them so big.
love myself. In both cases, it's better to love yourself than to hate yourself. But in both cases, there's a duality, there's a split that has happened. There's you, and there's a self that you either hate or love. So the question is, if there is the self that you either hate or love, who are you? Who is the one that hates or loves that self? What is going on here? the the dog does not have that problem because the dog has not arrived yet at ego. The dog has no self-image. The animal does not yet have an ego, so the dog is itself. The dog has no problem with body image or self-esteem because the dog is, and this is why.
It's so true. And we may laugh at this example, but think about it this way. As a child, you weren't depressed. As a child, you weren't anxious. I mean, hopefully you weren't. There are some horrible situations, but for the most of us, like there was a time in your life where you were absolutely pure, where your mind wasn't fractured, where you weren't fearful, where you weren't anxious, where you could, play in the sandbox and daydream all day, and everything was perfect, everything was amazing, everything was great. You didn't compare yourself to others. You didn't cling on to anything. You didn't hold on to anything. We're all born in this idealized state and we're eventually taken out of it by our teachers telling us to sit still, by our parents telling us you got bad grades, you're stupid, you're this, you're that. Like each day society takes this gift away from us and it's our duty to gain it back. It's our duty to um, reframe these things in our mind and realize where we went wrong. Realize like I'm making myself unhappy right now because someone told me to make myself unhappy. It's very weird when you put it in this way. It's very weird when you put it in this perspective. Like you're unhappy because you're living for someone else. Why would you do that to yourself? And when you realize that, then you can start to make a change. But until you realize that, you can't really make any changes because to ever solve a problem, you have to define it first. If you can't define the problem, if you don't know its parameters, how are you going to go about solving it? You're just shooting in the dark at that point. Like you're not. You're maybe you hit it. maybe you do something and in some way it gets you over an insecurity, gets you over a fear. It builds up a stronger individual, a stronger character, a stronger mind. But it's very rare where you take out all of your problems. And the thing that takes out all your problems is when you realize that for most of your life you've been living for others, and today's the day where you got to start living for yourself. Slowly each day start making decisions for yourself. Like a great decision you can make for yourself. Maybe you've always wanted to learn another language. Maybe you always wanted to get into reading. Maybe you always wanted to train jujitsu. Maybe you've been lax at the gym. Maybe you haven't been going hard. Maybe you want to get in better shape. Like do something for yourself every day. Do something that's going to make you happy. Do something that's going to make you feel better. Don't do it for anyone else. Don't do it for any arbitrary guy. Don't be like I'm going to make $1 million today because then my parents will be proud of me, or then maybe she'll want me back. Like no, do something right now that is going to give you some sort of fulfillment, and do that for the rest of your life. Find something each day that's going to make you happy. There's so many people that live in this world that don't do anything for themselves, and like a simple act of kindness to yourself each day can really start that snowball to being who you are, being who you truly are, and not just the shell of yourself that we walk through this world being.
Most animals are more joyous and less problematic than humans. They do not carry the weight of the self, what the Buddha called the self. One of the main teachings of the Buddha is to recognize the unreality of the self, that it is a mental construct that you mistake for who you are. So ultimately, the ego, then the essence of ego, could you.
So the idea he was talking about right here is the idea of Buddha, and the idea that like Buddha's mind wasn't active unless he was using it. Think of the last time where you were sitting still and your mind was off. You were in a state of meditation. This is what we're basically born with the ability to have, but we learn throughout societal programming that you're supposed to have your mind on. It's supposed to be talking to you. It's supposed to be giving you ideas. You're supposed to be, oh, when you finish something, then you go to the next thing. Then you go to the next thing. It's like that's not really the most productive way to use your mind, because you're just going to burn yourself out, and you're going to develop this ego, you're going to develop this baggage, you're going to start recognizing things that are unfair, you're going to start recognizing things that aren't right. And it's like, wouldn't you rather just live in this state of bliss? Wouldn't you rather just live in this state where maybe things are unfair, but why does it matter? Like if it's not affecting you in this second, then why does it matter? When it genuinely affects you, then get up, then riot, then do all these things. But like if it's not affecting you in this moment, there's no point in worrying about it. Seneca said this best: we suffer more in our own minds than we do in reality. And I think he said something along the lines like, we suffer in our minds first. We suffer in our minds first. Let that be heard. Like, before anything physically harms us, we're harmed mentally. And the mental harm is always worse than the physical harm. I'm telling you, it's always worse. Have you ever broken your leg? Have you ever broken your wrist? Have you ever broken a bone? What hurt more? A breakup or breaking a limb, breaking a bone? For me, it's a breakup. I don't know how bad your guys' breakups were, but like for me, it's always worse. You lose a piece of your soul. You lose a part of yourself that will never be there again. And it's like we must understand this because the mind controls the emotions. The mind controls all of these things, and the mind tells you the emotions to feel and what to do with these emotions. And when we can become in control of our emotions, we can control ourselves, can control our future inherently because we can control our reactions. We can do the best course of action in every single scenario, every single instance. Imagine if you made the right decision in every moment up until now in your life. Where would you be? I'm telling you, you'd probably be in a much better scenario. And this is the idea of it.
You could say is complete identification with thoughts. So, and the recurring thoughts in your mind that tell you who you are, that's the ego. And for people who are unconscious of that, they are so in the grip of these thought forms that they are virtually asleep. There's nobody there other than the dream of thought, the phantom self. So waking up means to suddenly recognize that the thoughts that go through your head continuously, but also the emotions that reflect those thoughts, are not who you are.
Your thoughts control your emotions, but there's something beyond that. Um, the easiest way to think about that is your body is the first sheath, your mind is sheathed in your body, and then your spirit or your soul is sheathed in your mind. That's the easiest way to think about it. Like we first are spiritual, mental, and physical beings, and like you can affect like it affects everything up in a chain and down in a chain. So like when we understand this, a lot of the things make sense to us. Like we must persist beyond our mind. Like whatever your mind is telling you is purely pattern recognition. It's not necessarily the right answer. It might be the right answer based off the evidence you gain, but like there's always there's always a exception to the rule. There's always some shred of evidence that can disprove what you're saying wrong. And when we give credit to this, we break the spell of our mind. We break the pattern recognition of like, oh, well, I'm going to fail again. Oh, I'm not going to do it again. Oh, all of these things are going wrong. Oh, I should worry about money. I should worry about this. So, like when you start listening to these voices, like you're confirming your emotions, you're confirming your feelings. You're going to start living in the same state of fear, the same state of anxiety. I don't know about you, but living in fear and anxiety is the worst feeling ever. And I don't wish it on my worst enemy. And it's so much easier to just break the loop at the source than it is to actively work your way out of it. And when you can live free of fear and anxiety, you can live in a creative state. You are able to see new possibilities. You're not confining yourself to the past. This is really the secret to creativity. Once you stop getting fearful and anxious about everything, then you can be creative. Because we're all born creative and it's all taken away from us. Think, are you more creative now or are you more creative when you were a kid? For most of us, the answer is more creative as a kid because you could daydream and the daydreams were so vivid. I wish I could still do that because I'd be able to write such great novels now. My writing is not that imaginative. It's very linear. Like I wish I was as creative as I was when I was a kid because if I had that level of imagination, I'd be the next fucking William Shakespeare. But like this is the idea that we're talking about. Like when you get out of fear, when you get out of anxiety, you're open to new possibilities. You're not persisting in the past. You're not persisting in the state of things up until now. You're persisting in a new reality and a new future.
So even the first beginning of awakening, spiritual awakening, one could say, is to recognize that certain thoughts are continuously arising in your mind, and you, for a moment, you have stepped out of that, and you recognize it's a stepping back, one could say. Underneath it all, there's
These certain thoughts are always controlled by like some unconscious force, something that went wrong in the past, some bad experience. Read them both, like them both. Yeah, I haven't read this guy yet. I really have to. I've read, I think I've read two Alan Watts books. I like his speeches better. Um, I don't know. Nothing compares to Osho for me. I think Osho's the best of these spiritual guys, but I'll instantly get copyrighted if I react to him. Maybe I'll do it at some point, but I just have to be careful. I don't know if it gives you strikes or whatever. I don't know if I can even stream it live. I don't know if it's going to affect the channel. But yeah, but Osho's the best of this stuff because he is like the most transcended past these ideas.
this vast realm of conscious presence. There's a presence there, without which you wouldn't be able to perceive anything, you wouldn't be able to think anything. It's a little bit like, I compare it sometimes to, before you live on the surface of the ocean, you're a little ripple on the surface of the ocean. And this ripple only knows itself as a ripple. And it looks at other ripples and sometimes feels threatened by other ripples or
This is a great explanation of the
wants to
mind.
use other ripples to enhance its own sense of self.
And there's so much information that our mind can never perceive it. That's the point he's going to get to. Like whatever your mind is telling you is such a um, it's like a needle in a haystack. It's not all the information that you need to really. Dude, Osho's his grave is the funniest thing ever. Osho, never born, never died, only visited. I think that's like such a cool thing.
And it's always fearful. It always compares itself to other ripples. A very unpleasant and frustrating way to
I don't know
live.
who that is. Who's that?
It hasn't realized the depth of its being, because the ripple is only a temporary expression of the vastness of the ocean. But it doesn't know that. So if the ripple for a moment comes to us, if the continuous thought, in this analogy, the ripple, of course, is the human being, and the ripple, when the ripple stops thinking for a moment, and this is the key, for a moment, you come to a cessation of the stream of thinking. And what's left?
When you stop listening to your mind for a second, the answer just comes to you. Think of when you were working on something, think of when you were working on a project or something that was just you were stumped on. Stopped what you're doing, you went and did your laundry, you went and did a chore, you did the dishes, you went on a walk, like you just took your mind off of it, then when you return to it, the answer is just there. That's what you just explained.
When you're not thinking about your history, your personal history, or the future. You're just becoming aware of this moment, yourself, this moment. But what is that self? It's no longer the
I had a feeling that autocorrect just screwed that up.
historical self. Or you can't say very much about it. There is an underlying sense of presence, of alive, conscious presence. It's alive. The awakening can begin with realizing that you are not the thoughts that go through your mind. That's the beginning. Now, what has arisen at that moment? Awareness. Suddenly,
This is just presence, just being in the moment. I think for people that think you're already aware, for people who think that you already have presence and you notice everything, I think one of the greatest examples you can do is literally stare at the wall in your room and you will start to notice details about that wall you've never noticed. Whether it's a chip in the paint, whether it's somewhere that's been covered up, and it's it's oh, there's a mark here that I've never like. You'll always notice something new if you really just pay enough attention. And this is the idea of it. Like we're so hyper fixated on the ideas, we're so hyper fixated on the day to day that we lose track of the bigger picture.
you realize that there is a dimension of consciousness in you that's not thinking, but just conscious. And that is your essence identity. To be rooted in that, it's ultimately very simple. I don't know why they don't teach that at school. I mean, the most important life lesson.
They don't teach it at school because school's not about becoming a successful, functioning individual. It's about becoming a worker bee. It's about becoming a functioning member of society, not a functioning individual. And there's a very key distinction, and I think we mix that up nowadays. We think that the education system is meant to create better thinkers, but it's just meant to create better parrots.
It is the
A gardening
transcendent
book to
dimension
finish?
of life, of
That's
who you are.
interesting.
To find
What
all the
kind of
ancient
gardening?
teachings,
How do
using
you make?
different terms and different words, they all point to this possibility of realizing the transcendent dimension of who you are. Whether the Buddha actually calls it, the translation is shunyata, emptiness, but the better translation.
Very similar to Taoism, in the nothingness, there's everything. When you remove all thoughts from your mind, that's where you have access to all thoughts.
Would be spaciousness. That's the essence of who you are, sunyata, spaciousness. Jesus talks about the kingdom of heaven, which in my translation is not, I translated kingdom, I translated as dimension, and heaven, which is the vast heaven. When you look up at the
The Bible says the kingdom of heaven is within you. That's what he's talking about. That's a
sky,
better way to
that's
think
the
about it.
closest thing you can get to spaciousness
I don't
in the
necessarily think
sense
that.
perceived world. The closest thing you can get to spaciousness.
In the Bible, all it says about heaven is that um, heaven is um, pure alignment with God. So we could view this as conscious. We could view this as a realm. I think it's been very dumbed down to see like, oh, it's something above us and hell something below. Like, all right, well, if you take everything that literally, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I could tell you the Brooklyn Bridge right now or something. I guess I don't know. I have a nice pyramid scheme to sell you because it's just it's very weird how people take a book like the Bible and only see the purely physical, only see the purely material. Like there was some I can't remember this the what was it? The quote was you reap what you sow. And someone was basically saying like, yeah, that could be interpreted as karma. And then this like Christian moralist guy was like, that's not what that means. It's like, all right, if you don't believe in some right and wrong, like I don't know what to tell you. Like there's just if you just don't like the idea of karma, like every single religion has it. Like to it just seemed like such cope for like, no, that's not what this means. It means this. Like there's only one interpretation of this old text that's been translated a billion times, so we really don't even know the true meaning of it.
You look at the vastness of the sky or heaven. In many
I see it
languages,
as
heaven and
purely
sky is the same
philosophical,
word.
purely
So
allegorical.
you look at the vastness of the sky, which is vast spaciousness. So the kingdom of heaven is the dimension
That's where the
of
deepest messages are,
spaciousness.
though.
It's a dimension of consciousness. This is why then they asked Jesus, where is the kingdom of heaven? When is it going to come? And he said, the kingdom of heaven cannot come with signs to be perceived. You can never say it's over here or it's over there, because the kingdom of heaven is within you. In fact, he was saying it is the essence of who you are. Consciousness is, but it's not only.
You also see in the Bible, God made Adam and Eve in His image, meaning that we all have God in us. Um, Time and time again, the Bible will confirm
The
this.
essence of who you are. It's the essence of the universe itself, because you are just a microcosm of the universe. So when you realize the essence of who you are, the universe is realizing its own essence through you, this little thing, through you.
For me, is every time I read a Rumi quote, I'm like, man, I need to read him. I've had this book for like 3, 4 months, and I just haven't picked it up. Kind of sad, but yeah. You're not a drop in the ocean. You're the entire ocean in a drop. That's an amazing quote. It's the end. Yes. All right. That's a good video. What lies beyond mine. Watch this Alan Watts video. Just in case it said the
You see,
same
the
stuff. I don't like sometimes these videos overlap, so I just don't want to play the same
problem
video.
is this. We identify in our experience a differentiation between what we do and what happens to us. We have a certain number of actions that we define as voluntary, and we feel in control of those. And then over against that, there is all those things that are involuntary. But the dividing line between these two is very arbitrary. Because, for
I don't know where he's going with this. I'm interested.
example, when you move your hand, you feel that you decide whether to open it or to close it. But then ask yourself, how do you decide? When you decide to open your hand, do you first decide to decide? You don't, do you? You just decide, and how do you do that?
You just decide. I know what he's doing with this.
And if you don't know how you do it, is it voluntary or involuntary? Let's consider breathing.
This is what he's explaining is the idea of Wu Wei. No action is the idea of it. It's when you act with such purpose, with such fulfillment, with such happiness in the action, it's not action. Um, it's the idea of if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. It's that idea. It's when you actually care about the thing that you're doing. It's not conscious. You're not worried about anything else. It's this idea.
You can
I
feel
hope
that you
that's what
breathe
he's.
deliberately. You can control your breath. But when you don't think about it, it goes on. Is it voluntary or involuntary?
Yeah, it is. That's what he's saying.
And so we come to have a very arbitrary definition of self. That much of my activity which I feel I do. And that then doesn't include breathing most of the time. It doesn't include the heartbeats. It doesn't include the activity of the glands. It doesn't include digestion. It doesn't include how you shape your bones, circulate your blood. Do you or do you not do these things?
These are really good questions. Whenever you can ask thought-provoking questions like this, you can always stimulate a lot of thought. It's only through great questions can we get great answers. And that's something that I know we were talking about the school system about like 10, 15 minutes ago, but like it sucks. I've never really, up until this semester, like experienced a professor who could ask profound questions, who could ask a question when you think you're completely right. He asks a question that goes, "Oh, I don't know about this scenario." I thought that was a very, it just makes like the 2 hours fly by so fast. And I wish more people were like that. And I wish more people were taught this idea because that's truly what made Socrates great. That's truly why I remember him. It was because of the questions he asked, not the answers he gave.
Now, if you get with yourself and you find out that you are all of yourself, a very strange thing happens. You find that your body knows that you are one with the universe. In other words, that the so-called involuntary circulation of your blood is one continuous process with the stars shining. If you find out that it's you who circulates your blood, you will at the same moment find out that you are shining the sun. Because your physical organism is one continuous process with everything else that's going on. Just as the waves are continuous with the ocean, your body is continuous with the total energy system of the cosmos. And it's all you. Only you're playing the game.
He's explaining Spinoza's God, the God in Taoism, the God in Buddhism, um, how Emerson conceptualized the universe. Um, yeah, I wanted to make a full screen.
That you're only this bit of it. But as I tried to explain, there are in physical reality no such things as separate events. Doesn't it really astonish you that you are this fantastically complex thing? And that you're doing all of this and you never had any education in how to do it? Never learned, but you're this miracle? Well, the point is that from a strictly physical, scientific standpoint, this organism is a continuous energy with everything else that's going on.
There's the Hermetics who believe that the world is working on such a grand scale that you can't see the order, and thus we see it as chaos, but everything is going according to plan.
And if I am my foot, I am the sun. Only we've got this little partial view, we've got the idea that no, I'm just something in this body, the ego. That's a joke. The ego is nothing other than the focus of conscious attention. It's like a radar on a ship. The radar on a ship is a troubleshooter. Is there anything in the way? And conscious attention is a design function of the brain to scan the environment, like a radar does.
Conscious attention is a design function of the brain to scan the environment. You can't always observe everything. And this is why sometimes our thoughts don't necessarily translate to good things. Sometimes our thoughts are telling us that things aren't going to work out, that I can't do this, that I can't do that. This is the key distinction that you must make. Like your brain picks up signals, but you can't pick up every signal. And again, if you don't believe me, stare at something that you thought you knew every inch of. Look at your house. I'm sure you'll notice something in it, some imperfection that you've never seen before. Do a walk around your neighborhood. Try to observe absolutely everything. You will find something new. There's always more information than we can ever hope to perceive, and somewhere in this information lies the solution. Somewhere in this information lies the actual truth, but we can never observe the truth because we're only as observing of the environment as we're allowed to be, as our tools allow us to be. And we're never going to be perfect. And these imperfections lead into imperfect ideas.
And note for any troublemaking changes. But if you identify yourself with your troubleshooter, then naturally you define yourself as being in a perpetual state of anxiety. And the moment we cease to identify with the ego and become aware.
This is such a good picture. This is so true. Like any negative thought, anything about yourself that you don't like, is you listening to that voice in your head telling you things are going to work out. We always make our problems worse than they have to be. And the moment you realize this, the moment your problems start to Stop becoming so big.
That we are the whole organism, you realize that as a first thing how harmonious it all is. Because your organism is a miracle of harmony. All this thing functioning together. Even those corpuscles and creatures that are fighting each other in the bloodstream and eating each other up. If they weren't doing that, you wouldn't be healthy. So what is discord at one level of your being is harmony at a higher level. And you begin to realize that, and you begin to be aware too that the discords of your life and the discords of people's life, which are a fight at one level, at a higher level of the universe, are healthy and harmonious.
Everything that you experience that is bad will one day become good. The ebbs and flows of life will always come, and it's just what lesson can you take away from it? What will you gain from this experience? What will you learn? What idea are you going to now have equipped in your arsenal?
And you suddenly realize that everything that you are and do is at that level as magnificent and as free of any blemish as the patterns in waves, the markings in marble, the way a cat moves, and that this world is really okay and can't be anything else, because otherwise it couldn't exist.
We gotta go back see the seals. I love seals so much.
And can't be anything else, because otherwise it couldn't
Come
exist.
on, they're so cute.
So then, if you awaken from this illusion, you can feel yourself not as a stranger in the world, not as something here on probation, not as something that has arrived here by fluke, but you can begin to feel your own existence as absolutely fundamental.
We confirm what we observe most of the time. Robert Anton Wilson, in his book, what is it called, Prometheus Rising, he had this idea. It wasn't his idea. He cited someone, but I love this idea. It was the idea that the thinker thinks and the prover proves. Whatever you think to be true, your mind will go about proving. And let that be a good thing. Let that be something that's beneficial. Let that be something that brings you fulfillment, brings you happiness, because whatever you seek to find in this world, your mind will prove it to be correct. This is why we see people with such fucked up ideologies see evidence of it and not be able to see past it, because whatever perspective you hold, whatever idea you hold, your mind will go to whatever length to justify it, to prove it. This is where all of these crazy conspiracy theorists have, like, they realize something's wrong, and they realize that there's something insidious about this world, and then they just go, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Oh, there's one shred of information here. That's absolute proof for me. That's all I need to see. Like, you know what I mean? It's like whatever the thinker thinks, the prover proves. I want you to understand that idea, because whatever we want to see about this world, we will see. We confirm our biases. We confirm our realities. We will inherently digitize this information into our mind and create a solidified worldview based off of these ideas. So be very careful of the ideas you accept. Let them only be good ideas. Let them only be ideas that are uplifting, not ideas that are detrimental. If you believe that you can't achieve something because someone's held you back, then guess what? You won't achieve something because someone's held you back. I mean, the real answer is you held yourself back, but yeah, keep blaming that same person.
What you are basically, deep, deep down, far, far in, is simply the fabric and structure of existence itself. So in this idea then, everybody is fundamentally the ultimate reality, not God in a politically kingly sense, but God in the sense of being the self, the deep down basic whatever there is. And you're all that. Only you're pretending you're not.
Only you're pretending you're not. The moment you recognize the power of your mind is the moment you start utilizing it. That's the idea. Like we all have the ability to transform the way we see ourselves, to transform the way we see the world, to transform the ideas we fixate on, and thus change what we see about the world. But for so many people, this is not the case. For so many people, they would rather live in a world that they don't control because if they don't control it, then they have no excuse to not enjoy it. Isn't that a weird thing? Isn't it a weird thing how people are addicted to being in a state of mind that they don't like, being in a state of mind that doesn't bring them happiness? To me, like I don't really live my life off anything except fulfillment and happiness. I don't seek anything aside from that, and it's doing me pretty good. Maybe, maybe it changes. Maybe at some point that's not what um like works for me. But I've only done this for about probably a year now. And I've never been happier. So yeah. All right, we'll read this quote, and then I'll probably end the stream because I'm getting tired. The relationship of self to other is the complete realization that loving yourself is impossible without loving everything defined as other than yourself. Damn. I just have to end it there. Um, Thank you guys for joining the stream. Thank you guys for having fun. This is a pretty interesting stream. Um, I'll stream again tomorrow. My streaming schedule might be a little weird on Friday because I have a few things I have to do, but I will get to it at some point. But yeah, see you guys in the next one. Peace out.